Okay. Thanks for joining us. This is Weston and Jay. We are going to do a knowledge drop session, and we've got a couple of good topics. So we're going to release some videos around this, but pretty straightforward, small segments with a lot of information. How you doing, Jay?
I'm good, Weston. How are you?
Good. So if you don't know Jay, he is the owner and owner of Avian Golf, Redbird, Jeffmont Sports. He's been making golf clubs for what, 4 decades now?
Yeah, been working on them since the middle 70s.
Well, there you
So
go.
I'm a fossil.
So from an experience standpoint, Jay's been making golf clubs with his bare hands, shaping woods with files and sanders, all the way up to metal woods and now titanium drivers. So just a wealth of experience when it comes to club building, club making, right? Not just putting it together, but actually designing and making golf clubs. So really excited to have these conversations with you.
Excited to be here as well.
So our first topic we're going to talk about is just bulge and roll on a driver. So as most people know, the driver face is curved in certain directions. There are other companies out there that market what kind of curve is on the face of their driver. But I'd love for you to talk about these two aspects and what you've learned.
Okay, well, it started back in the days of persimmon and wound golf balls in the 70s. The ball spun more. And you have a phenomenon called gear effect when you hit the golf club off center, like towards the toe stops, the heel continues, hence the face opens, and it's like a gear with the face opening and turning to the right, it imparts hook spin to the left. You can imagine two gears meshed. And so what we would do in those days, you hand faced all persimmon woods. And I did lots of things over the years out of blocks and repaired, a lot of the classics as well. And when you faced a wood, you were trying to come up with a uniform curvature. It's actually convex. The center of the club face is higher than the heel or the toe. And by shaping it and rounding it off towards the toe and towards the heel, coming up with this kind of gentle curve, you're opening the face for that shot that's mishit out towards the toe, where the face opens and imparts hook spin. And the idea was to get that face in this particular portion open enough so it would provide enough room for the ball to start out right, and then the hook spin to take over and curve back into the center of the fairway. The opposite was true with the heel. It would be closed in essence. So when the ball was hit there and the toe continued and closed, the ball would start far enough left to compensate for the cut spin that was put on it. And how much bulge you put on a golf club is determined by how deep the center of gravity is in the head. So the further back the center of gravity was in an old persimmon driver, the more the club would have a tendency to twist when it was hit off center. Hence, it would need more horizontal curvature. With roll, that's the vertical component of that. And there is, when you hit let's see if can you see that okay?
Yep.
So when you hit a driver above its center of gravity, you have gear effect as well. And the club face will tend to open this way. And it doesn't, you would think, okay, well, if you have gear effect and the face is going upwards and back, the ball is going to come off with forward spin. That doesn't really happen. It comes off with less spin. And you can tell that when we see it all the time when we're fitting drivers. Ideally, you hit it typically a little above the center of gravity on a modern driver, and you'll get the hottest shots out there because they aren't spinning as much. They're kind of knuckling, flyer, if you will. And the flight is, it starts up real quick and then it flattens out and looks like it jumps. So you're putting, with vertical curvature, you're putting more loft high, more loft low. I found over the years, doing that to the same extent as the horizontal curvature bulge doesn't really fix what it needs to. When you hit it high in the face, you typically don't have any problem getting the ball in the air. And when you hit it low in the face, you certainly don't want more loft, because the club face is doing this with vertical gear effect. It's de-lofting, which creates more spin but a lower flight. And in the old days with wood, where the ball spun a lot, you would see shots that were hit low. You could tell they were risers. It'd start low and the backspin would accentuate, and they would go straight up in the air and have essentially really weak flight. But that being said, it doesn't make sense for you to have less loft low in the face. And so what we've done over the years and graduated to is we use a little bit less roll. We put from the center of the face high, we put a little bit more than we do from the center of the face low. So it's not a consistent curve. And the reason we do that is visually, you want to see, looking down at a driver, a little bit more of the face. It instills more confidence that you're going to be able to launch it effectively. And you don't want less loft low, because it really is not conducive to helping you on any measurable level. And so that's what it is there. Bulge is the most important. It's a compensatory factor for gear effect.
Awesome. Yeah, very in-depth. And so faces have changed over the years. I've heard rumors of Hogan actually having a flat face. And then later in his technology making golf clubs, he created what a unique face, which isn't necessarily unheard of right now. So
right. You hear it now marketed as a new thing, which is always pretty comical, called the twist face by an unmentioned company that pretty much everybody knows who I'm talking about. That's not their invention. And way back, that was a common facing technique we did on woods. And usually what we would do is we would fan the upper portion of the toe a little bit more bulgy and a little bit more lofted. And that was as much a visual thing as anything. So when the player set the club down, it didn't look closed or hooked. It looked more playable. And then the opposite would happen. I never really employed this too much because I didn't like it, but in the heel portion, conversely, you'd see some companies would face the club a little lower lofted and a little more horizontal bulgy there to compensate. So in essence, you're taking that radius and twisting it. And then Hogan popularized it with his equipment company back, would have been Wooden Days, so probably 70s on. And back way before that in the 30s and 40s, I've seen some woods and they were flat faced.
Yeah.
And so pretty much like everything that's happened in golf club evolution over time, they're accidents, and people start monkeying around and experimenting. And that's like bounce on a sand wedge. That's famous with Sarazen, for example. But the bulge on the face of woods was done pretty much through kind of trial and error and that kind of thing, and arrived upon.
Yeah.
Now it's not quite as critical because the ball doesn't spin as much. The ball is significantly different than what it was in the middle 70s with the wound Titleist Balata ball. And unfortunately, certain really good players, as a side note, like Corey Pavin, have become obsolete. Corey spun the ball around the golf course. Phenomenal ball striker, shaped shots. And now with the new golf ball, where you just launch it way up in the air and blast it, and it doesn't move as much, it's made him irrelevant, sadly enough. So
would you say that with golf balls spinning less off the tee nowadays, is bulge and roll needed to be more prevalent on a driver or less prevalent?
It depends on where the center of gravity is, because the fact still remains, if you don't hit the ball on the center, the club face twists. And if you ever video yourself, you can see evidence of that. If you video yourself face on and hit take driver swings, and you hit one off the toe, when the ball's about a foot off the club, if you freeze the frame and you've got decent light so you can freeze it up, you'll see the club face will look the club will look very distorted and very, very open. And that's because of the collision out towards the toe. It stops and the heel continues. And so that there still is side spin, but there is less.
Yeah.
And with new hollow drivers, basically all drivers now are a shell, whether it be titanium or whatever material you're talking about. There is a higher moment of inertia, so they are more resistant to twisting off center. So all of that needs to be taken into account and engineered into the golf club so that it performs as well as it can perform.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. We're looking forward to many more knowledge drops as we discuss equipment and technology. So thanks for joining us, guys, and stay tuned for more.
Thanks for listening.